The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place. With my partner, Ian Parker, I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
Oh, it is a big fight week in the New York City this weekend. UFC 281. We are in Manhattan, where Madison Square Garden will play host to the third meeting, technically, of Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira. Two of those first meetings, of course, were in kickboxing, and they're fighting for the first time in a mixed martial arts cage on Saturday, and I cannot wait for it, as I'm sure, Ian, you cannot wait for it as well.
I'm pumped. You know what? There's a good storyline behind it. We got a good card. You know, Chandler Poirier, we know, is going to blow the roof off this place. Let's go.
Oh, and this is such a big weekend, man. Veterans Day. Thank you so much to all the veterans out there. This is your day. And as an MMA fan, it's really our weekend, man. UFC 281, so nice. And look at this backdrop, man. Look. I feel like it's almost like that. What is that? It's that Paul Rudd skit where it's like, hey, look at us. Look at us.
We're here.
Look at us, man. Look where we made it. Manhattan skyline right there. Some bridge back there. That's the Brooklyn Bridge, right? Yeah. I don't really know my New York City geography, but it's a great setting for a great card, which we will get into. But first, we're going to look back at UFC Fight Night last weekend, how Ian Parker did. We like to think that we do very well every time on this show, but we had a little bit of an off week, but our first off week in a while.
Yeah, you know what? These are one of the ones I wish we didn't have to recap, but we don't hide from our losses. Marina Rodriguez, although I thought it was a little early on the stoppage, Lemos really did work. Magny got the win. We lost the rest of them, but we did hit our parlay. We're looking to bounce back. 2 good weeks, 2 not good weeks. Actually, this one was a horrible week, to be completely honest with you. But we're going to bounce back with a great week. And what have you done for me lately? I'm ready to perform. Let's do it.
Hey, it's going to happen. You can't handicap fights basically every weekend for the entire year and not have a few off ones. I think we've done pretty darn well so far in 2022. We're going to look to continue that, particularly on the main card at UFC 281. I've been talking a lot about the main event, but there is a lot of fights to talk about on this main card. Some great ones. You got Dan Hooker, a fan favorite and kind of a must-win situation here against Claudio Puelles. Frankie Edgar, the swan song. The building's going to be tearing up when Frankie Edgar walks out or runs out at Madison Square Garden. Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler. A lot of people have circled that one as their favorite fight on the card. Carla Esparza looking to defend her title against Zhang Weili. And then, of course, the main event. Izzy Adesanya looking to defend his title for the 6th time, and it is the shortest odds that he's had, I believe, since the Paulo Costa fight, Ian. So you are getting an opportunity to bet Adesanya at a level or at a number that you're not usually accustomed to, but it is against a guy who has beaten him twice, I'll bet, in a kickboxing ring. What are your early thoughts on this one?
Early thoughts is I think we got to throw this kickboxing stuff out the window here. If you saw and went back and watched these fights, Izzy, I thought he won that first fight by decision. Second round up 2-0, and then he got knocked out. His body of work has been essentially flawless at middleweight, minus the one blemish in Jan Blachowicz, which can't blame him there. And Pereira just hasn't fought a whole lot of people. You know, 3 fights in the UFC getting a title shot. I think it's more about the story here. I think Israel took this fight wanting that revenge, and he's that type of guy who says, listen, if I'm going to defend my legacy, if I'm going to be the best of all time, I don't say no to anyone, and he knows he's a dangerous opponent. Losing those 2 fights, it's got to be something in his head about that. But you know what? He's got a chance to rise above, get the revenge, and then show why he's the best at what he does.
Well, I got to ask, you know, I mean, we are taping this right after the UFC 281 weigh-in, and there was a lot of nervous people there. You know, Alex Pereira was one of the last ones to step in. He stepped in right before the limit. He did make weight. He actually came in below the championship weight. But having known that and what he's putting his body through, any kind of hesitation or any kind of extra analysis based on what you saw on the scale?
You know what? At first, when we were talking about this off camera, we're like, listen, if he comes in a half-pound over and just makes it, how's that going to affect his cardio in rounds 4 and 5 if it gets there? He has not been past round 3 in the UFC or any time period. We've not seen a 5-rounder. And with the weight coming off, we know that affects cardio. We've seen it before. But the fact he came out a pound under, he looked all right. I mean, his face still looked a little sunken in, which is normal, but the rest of his body looked good. The way he walked off the stage,
he did.
He wasn't cramping. He didn't need help. So to me, fight's on. He made weight. Let's go.
Yeah, and the fact that obviously mentally and physically he didn't have to go back and cut more weight is a really big deal. Okay, well, let's talk about some actual picks, Ian. And as you're giving these picks, what swayed you? What is why? You know, because that's the big reason here. You know, what went into how do you break this fight down? Because it's a weird fight because we've seen these two, but technically in a different sport.
You know what? You got to just throw those 2 fights out the window. MMA is different. Both guys have come such a long way. Pereira wasn't really big in kickboxing when the first fight happened. You know, he didn't have a big record, he didn't have a large resume. And in MMA, he's only fought 3 fights against Mission Ladies. Round 1, he got taken down, was held down. You know, in the second fight against Bruno Silva, went 3 rounds. And then the Sean Strickland fight, well, Sean just kind of walked like a zombie and said, you know what, if he hits me, I'm going to be the tough guy, and that didn't work out.
Did not.
How do we, it didn't work out well at all, but how do we look past the body work of what Israel Adesanya did just because Pereira might be this boogeyman that we all see and afraid of? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm terrified of this guy, but Izzy has fought the best of the best. You know, I think guys like Robert Whittaker test Izzy more because they have that wrestling. You know, for me, I just think Izzy has fought better overall MMA competition. I think that's going to play a factor here. Plus, the 5 rounds makes a difference. Pereira has not done a main event or gone 5 rounds. I think Izzy knows this, and so that's why he took the fight without any hesitation.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, man. Alex Pereira has not been here very much. Yes, he's had a lot of experience in kickboxing, but it's a lot to come into Madison Square Garden, face a guy like Izzy. It's a big week. It's going to test him in a lot of ways before the fight has even started. So let's move on to the co-main event. It is the women's strawweight title fight. And I got to tell you, Ian, there was a very interesting stat that our guys in the stat room found for this fight. And when you look at the betting odds, over the last 15 years, Carla Esparza as the champion is the 3rd biggest underdog as a champion. So what you're looking at there is the champion is the underdog to the challenger. And what struck me in this one, Jan Blachowicz beat Izzy. Frankie Edgar beat BJ. Aljamain Sterling beat Petr Yan. The only one that didn't get it done was Matt Serra versus George St. Pierre. We could be looking at a situation where 4 of the top 5 most lopsided odds in this situation where the champion got it done. So I'm just throwing it out there that if I was gonna throw, you know, Zhang Weili on my parlay, I might take a little pause looking at that graphic. What do you think about those stats?
Well, look, let's take a look at Carla Esparza. Now you got me thinking before when I was so confident prior to that whole speech you just gave. Look, Carla Esparza, we know what she brings to the table. It's wrestling, wrestling, wrestling. When she's on top, it's position over submission. She throws the elbows. She throws her strikes. She's very good at defending submissions when she's on top. She's physically strong. She knows her angles. Wrestling gives you those good hips. Now, the thing is this, though. When you are that one-dimensional, you have to develop the striking so that wrestling is a threat. And I don't think her striking is literally a threat at all. Now, against Yan Xiaonan, she took the fight to the floor and was able to get it done pretty quickly. I understand that. But Zhang Weili, after fighting Rose, we saw what she did to Joanna, right? But look who she's training with now. Henry Cejudo and Captain Eric. And who better when it comes to wrestling? When she's not worried about the striking, not worried about getting knocked out, and she only has to worry about the wrestling and sprawl, to me, that makes Zhang Weili a lot more dangerous. She's already a dangerous fighter as it is. She carries power. She's such a good striker. Her takedown defense against Rose, people are going to say, oh, MMA math, but Rose took her down at will. Rose's striking was such a crazy threat that Zhang Weili was surprised when the takedowns came.
Right.
And that happens to some of the best wrestlers. Leon Edwards took down Kamaru Usman.
Right.
You know, because he was so fearful, not fearful, but worried about the striking. That's a real concern. In this fight, I don't see that happening. I don't know where the threat comes if the fight doesn't go to the ground. If Carla Esparza does not wrestle, I think Zhang Weili mauls her.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think this is a trap. You know, do I think Esparza can wrestle? Will she get a takedown here and there? But we've seen Zhang Weili get back up. She can scramble. She's going to be the more athletic fighter. I think physically stronger. And that striking is going to play dividends. And look, I think Zhang Weili is going to finish this fight inside the distance.
You see a little bit of the line movement there. You said inside the distance. I like that. And you also, when you mentioned she has worked a lot on her wrestling lately.
Yeah.
Not only with Captain Eric and Henry Cejudo, but she was out there in Thailand working with the Hickman brothers and their new facility. She's been putting a lot of time and energy into her wrestling. And it's not just for this camp. It does go back a few of them. So we got to pick inside the distance on Zhang Weili in the co-main. Let's move to this people's main event, as these two guys are calling it. And I think it's appropriate that they do so. Dustin Poirier taking on Michael Chandler. It's a very... I think everyone would agree this is a competitive fight. So it's kind of interesting to see Dustin Poirier as higher than a 2-1 favorite. What do you attribute that to? And ultimately, how are you going to make your pick on this one?
You know what? I don't really know how to attribute that. Maybe his body of work compared to what Chandler's done and who Chandler has beaten. You know, Chandler beating Tony Ferguson. That first round, Tony caught him and got on top, but Chandler came out with that Pat McAfee kick to the moon and sent Tony Ferguson to a place that doesn't exist. For me, the one factor here, number one, I don't think Chandler should be that big of an underdog in a fight where he doesn't have to worry about wrestling. I don't think he has to worry about getting submitted, and he also doesn't really have to worry about the power of Dustin Poirier. Poirier is a volume guy who puts it on. It doesn't mean he can't get knocked out. It just means that it's not the one-shot hitter-quitter that he did against Justin Gaethje, and even against Gaethje, he didn't go out. Even though he got absolutely annihilated over 3 rounds, he still had his moments. But for me, Michael Chandler, I think this is a more important fight. This is his last opportunity to get a title shot if he wins. Not saying he's necessarily next, but he's got to be there. And also, the one thing that we need to understand here, this is only a 3-round fight. Dustin Poirier, I think, thrives in a 5-round situation here. I think this makes Chandler more dangerous. He could put his step on the gas for 3 rounds. And there's one thing that Chandler said that really sticks out to me. I need to win this fight. I don't need to get a fight of the night bonus. I don't need to blow the roof off the place, although he probably still will. To me means, hey, why don't I wrestle a little bit and mix it up? This win is so important to him, and I like these odds. I'm going to go with Michael Chandler here. You know, I think Dustin has the better precision boxing, the volume, but for me, Chandler's aggression and pressure that he could put on for 3 rounds, I don't know if Poirier has the power to knock him out the way Gaethje does. And if Chandler does come out and do a power double and surprise Dustin, it makes Chandler that much more of a dangerous man. Give me Chandler at the plus numbers right now.
Yeah, can't wait for that fight. And real quickly, before we move on to the next one, you're picking Chandler. Do you get greedy at all and go for the knockout, or do you just stay with Chandler?
You know, you asked me that a lot. With Neil Magny, you asked me that last week, and I said, what, death taxes and Neil Magny by decision, then he wins by submission against D-Rock. Listen, I don't think there's a need to get greedy here. I think the numbers are good enough at the plus 190, if I'm correct, as it stands, to get Chandler at that number. You know, because Poirier is a hard guy to finish. I mean, listen, Oliveira subbed him. I don't think Chandler subs him. I don't remember the last time Dustin got knocked out. Maybe it was Michael Johnson, right? But for me, Chandler as the underdog, I'm good with that.
Yep, I like it. I thought you were going to maybe go dog or pass, and then we did the dog there with Michael Chandler. Let's go Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez, and I'll just tell you the numbers that stick out here for me in this fight. Chris Gutierrez does have a high takedown defense. He has 73.5% takedown defense, and he's also a very accurate striker. Actually, for the fighters that qualify for this, he's the 3rd most accurate striker in the bantamweight division with 58.5% of his strikes landing. Those don't add up well for our boy Frankie Edgar, but we love Frankie. We know that he's been capable of winning fights as underdogs in the past. Can he do it here in his final one?
You know what frightens me for Frankie is the fact that his last 2 fights has been knocked out brutally. It hasn't been just, you know, the referee came in, stopped it before. No, he got knocked out really bad by Cheeto, by Corey Sand. It's tough. It's tough to see Frankie like this because his style of fight is in and out, takedowns, cardio, speed, all this stuff. But he's fighting a guy who's looked way bigger, who's super confident, good takedown defense, like you mentioned. And his striking, I mean, listen, his power in his hands is not where it's at, but it's those kicks. And he will, if he can kick Edgar's legs, he's got to go low with the calf because Frankie will catch it and get a single. If Frankie can't wrestle here, he's in a lot of trouble. I don't love this fight for him as the swan song, as you call it. I would have liked to see maybe a Frankie versus Dominic Cruz here, but Gutierrez, his name might shine a little bit brighter if he finishes Frankie. I do like Gutierrez here. But listen, Frankie's a legend. I just hope he doesn't get finished. I hope he's able to have a good fight and go out and ride into the sunset.
Yep, what a scene that's going to be when Notorious B.I.G. comes on for Frankie in the final time, Madison Square Garden. Okay, let's go to lightweight to round out this main card. It is a lightweight bout between Dan Hooker and Claudio Puelles. We all sort of know the narrative here, man. Everybody loves Dan Hooker as well. There's a lot of fan favorites on this card. He's been finished in about 2.5 minutes in his last 2 fights. Claudio Puelles, obviously a guy who's on the rise, 5-1 in the UFC. What do you think? What do you think of this fight?
Look, if you're going to look at, hey, how do I get Dan Hooker back in the win column? This fight makes sense because Claudio Puelles has not really shown us his striking. We've seen the knee bars, the grappling, the cardio, the tenacity. He's that young lion fighting that veteran who's kind of on the decline here. My issue with Hooker is the weight cut last time. Now he's going back up. He seems overly active for a guy who's been taking a ton of damage. And that fight that you're looking right now against Nasrat Haqparast, he grappled. And we talked about that because he's fighting another kickboxer. He grappled. He's not going to out-grapple Claudio here. So for me, a lot of people might be on Hooker saying, oh, he's the better stand-up guy. He's fought better level competition.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Claudio's going to go in there and knock him out, but if Claudio touches him enough to get the takedown, he's the way better grappler. And for me, dog or pass on this one. Like, I'll be rooting for Dan Hooker because we all love him and want to see him continue. This is one of those situations where if Puelles sticks to a game plan, which he hasn't shown lack of fight IQ, and Hooker just seems to lose himself in the moments and take too many shots, I'm going to go Claudio Puelles here.
It's interesting. You know, we should start calling these dog or pass situations on the main card. We should just start calling them, if Ian has hit all of his prelim picks and you're rolling in money, then go ahead and put some money on the dog.
I like that. That's a safer
at
play.
Plus 130. Yeah. Let's move from this one, and we're going to talk about one of the prelims in depth. It is a lightweight fight between Brad Riddell and Renato Moicano. This could end up being one of the best fights of the night. I mean, both these guys are studs, but they're also both coming in bad need of a win. Who gets it done here?
You know what? This is an interesting one because for me, Renato Moicano has the more tools, the ground guy. Riddell has shown durability. He has shown toughness, but His last couple fights, he has not looked the same. He's looked like a shell of himself, and he's fighting someone Moicano, who I believe his stand-up keeps getting better. Now, yes, he did lose to RDA, but he also took the fight. He was in Vegas, flew to Brazil, got the call, literally got back on a plane, flew here. So he traveled for like 3 days in a row on the plane cutting weight, and RDA is no slouch, as we know. For here, Brad Riddell brings striking. He brings somewhat durability at this point, but Renato Moicano, what you just said is so important. He needs that win. He takes his fight to the ground. I mean, it's night and day. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. And Moicano's striking is precise. He's defensively sound. He's got a good jab. He's not wild. And I think he's a smart fighter. He needs this win. He's going to get the submission. If he does, I'm going with Moicano here.
Ooh, I was getting a little bit best bet vibes there from you. We'll see if I'm right there later in the program. We are going to quickly go through the rest of the prelims. Ian and I will cede the floor to you. Why don't you walk us through all of you? And you can find these, by the way, on ESPN Plus all day on Saturday.
Let's start off. Back to Renato Moicano there. The ground game. Fight smart. Get it down. Know where you are better. And he gets the win. Dominic Reyes, it is good to see that name back on my screen. Listen, if he comes in shape, which I think he will, I think that layoff might have been the best thing for him. Ryan Spann is dangerous. His cardio's not great. He doesn't really fight overly smart. Look, he got taken down by Kutalaba, and he got that guillotine. That doesn't happen here. Reyes wins this by TKO or KO. Erin Blanchard versus Meatball Molly McCann. Look, Molly McCann, everybody loves. However, she's fighting someone who just put on an unbelievable performance recently against Miranda Maverick. Great submissions, great ground game, smart fighter. I think she wins this by decision. That minus 400 number is a little too crazy for me. And Andre Petroski versus Turman. Look, Petroski showed out in his last fight. He looked great. If he could keep his cardio together, which we always question, I think Petroski is stronger, faster, gets the fight to the floor and win. Yep. Do not blink with Matt Ferfola versus Otman Azatar. I think Azatar gets it done. Ferfola just likes to get hit way too much. I'm going Juarez in this next fight against Double K. I just think the power, the striking there, she keeps the fight standing. She's good. Give me Choi over Triziano. Montel Jackson versus Julio Arce. Another really good fight. I think Jackson just going to be too much of a bully for Julio. I like Jackson there. And last but not least, Olberg. You know what? We're going to go here with him. That number has gone up. He was at one point, I think, plus 105. We saw in his last fight. If he just goes out there, doesn't throw wild, and pays himself, those hands are dangerous, he's going to fight someone willing to engage. Give me Olberg right there.
I got to tell you what, man. Looking at you go through those prelims, there's some good fights on these prelims. Really good fights. So it's some close odds, some good action here, which leads us to your parlay. A lot to pick from here at UFC 281. What are we doing with your parlay?
All right, let's start off. We are going to go with Erin Blanchfield here. I just think that, listen, Molly, if she doesn't land a spinning elbow here, Blanchfield takes it to the ground, and it's going to be very difficult for Molly to get back up. Gutierrez over Edgar, Zhang Weili over Carlos Esparza, and we are going to go with Israel Adesanya, the champ, to retain here. I just think the difference between what he's done and what Pereira has done, plus the 5 rounds, is going to be the factor. Izzy makes people miss, so the power doesn't matter if you can't hit him. And that parlay, we're going to get plus 238.
All right, so we're going to have a 4-teamer ticket in our pocket. How about your best bets for this weekend?
We are going to start off with Olberg here. I think he stands there. He keeps his chin low, hands up, and he's fighting someone a little wild. He's more precise, that power. I like that number there. Dominic Reyes inside the distance. I'm shocked it's only minus 110. Spann seems like kill or be killed. I think Reyes comes in, angry, hungry. He gets it done. You're getting good at this, bro.
I'm getting so good at this.
You're getting good. He really does not.
I think I'm 100% when I call you. I think you're going to make that a best bet.
I think you should just do this moving forward. I'll just give you the paper. You're good. So Moicano there. I am going Michael Chandler. That plus 190 with a 3-round fight against someone in Poirier who I don't think is going to try to wrestle, and Chandler can. And last but not least, Zhang Weili at even money to win inside the distance. If she wins, it's not going to be 5 rounds. Sprawl and brawl for her, that power, that intensity. I think we're getting a new champ in that fight.
I'm telling you, bro, I'm getting very good at reading your mind. We should do Ian Parker's best bets delivered to you by Brett Okamoto. I'll just say what they are because I already know them before we show the graphic. It's amazing. All right, we got one last order of business to do, and of course it is the long shot parlay. This is what's really going to fill our pockets. What are we doing with our long shot parlay?
Pockets, whatever money can fit into, I'm in. Zhang Weili by KO, TKO, or DQ. Chandler, Claudio Puelles, and Juarez at plus 2,643. I couldn't get you that 40-1 again. I was trying. I was looking for it, but this one's way better than last week. Look, I think if Juarez and Puelles hit, I think we're going to get excited. Now, I do want to say this, guys. The last long shot, we got to the last leg.
Yep.
If you are on any of those websites that offer cash outs and you are going for a 40-1 long shot, cash out or hedge it, you are profitable at that point.
Yeah.
Hugely profitable. Don't get greedy. Or get greedy. That's up to you.
Hey, yeah, you know.
I say whatever it is. I'm just
every now
saying,
and then.
be disciplined, be smart. Let's win some money here.
I like it, man. And I like doing this show, and I like doing it on rooftops in New York City, man. It's
nice.
very, very fun. UFC 281 is going to be a heck of a card. Find it on ESPN Plus, and then come back with us and watch more Best Bets, because we are going to continue to break down all of these fights from a gambling perspective and have a good time doing it. Enjoy the fights. We'll see you later.